On my right.
I'm Drew Holbrook. I'm with Gulfstream Aerospace. I've been with the company a little over 12 years now. I originally started out in the engineering side of things, so I'm an aerospace engineer by trade. I did preliminary design and initial concepts for a number of years, which got me into the virtual and augmented space. So for about the past 3 years, we've been exploring VR, AR technologies. We've had a cave even longer than that. So my job now is in a group we've dubbed the Immersive Realities team. We look at cave, VR, AR, and R&D for future technology. So anything else that might be out there on the horizon. So I get to do a lot of fun things at work, and get to explore with a lot of cool new gadgets that are coming out. So
Thank you, dude. Saphir?
Good morning. My name is Saphir Baladi. Until about two weeks ago, I was head of innovation at Vans, and I transitioned into a new role, which focuses on advanced digital product creation for all of the VF brands. VF is a corporation that owns a portfolio of about 25 brands, Vans being one of them. I'm an industrial designer and mechanical engineer by trade. Started out in the automotive industry, which is kind of what got me into the space of virtualization, and brought that into the new industry that I entered when I joined Vans 14 years ago. We're now in a position to really understand and develop our point of view, our strategy around digital product creation, but also we're thinking about what kind of experiences we can create beyond just the product. And we're also taking a very close look at how these immersive technologies can help the designers and the product creation teams internally to create product and experiences differently.
Thanks, Saphir. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Barron. I work at Ford Motor Company, and my role is a global technical specialist in immersive realities and advanced visualization. So I do work with all of our global regions at Ford, and as a resource to them to develop high-end visualization in immersive environments. And I've really hammered away at VR and AR for I don't know, close to 2 decades. So I have a lot of experience in the practical use and application of the technology, and it is pretty great that at Ford we use it as a way of product development. So in the matter of course of business, what we do at Ford, we do immersive assessments, on every vehicle that's out there on the road now. So we have a really good foundation, and I'm excited to talk about the application of immersive tech in enterprise, and then maybe where some of the issues are and the gaps and things that we can't do that maybe some of the people out here that are making new technologies and selling can fill those gaps for us.
Outstanding. So what I wanted to do now is kind of go a little bit more detail as far as like some of the things that you specifically are doing at your organizations, and kind of start it with the why you're doing it, like what was the point, and then what kind of ROI you're actually getting from that type of experience. And if we could start back with you, Elizabeth.
Okay. So the ROI for immersive realities is really as a communication paradigm between different organizations. And in the end, the data doesn't lie. And if you can get immersed in the data that you have, the geometry that has been created at any point in the product development process, and you can analyze that data, cut sections, understand some like analytical considerations, and then bring it back to what a customer could see, that data will not lie. And when you get a spreadsheet full of information, numbers can be kind of presented in a way that is most favorable to whatever, but that data does not lie. And so the real, the ROI that we get is that we understand where we're at and we have truth in that source of data. And the case for leadership on why they wanted to invest in the technology really had to do with they could get a comprehensive, complete view of our vehicle and then go anywhere and look at any part of the vehicle. So we would have an agenda with 5 things that we were going to do, and a leader would come in and look at the 6th thing that wasn't on the agenda, and then just go over to some area that, like, if we were looking at the front end of the vehicle, he'd walk over to the back and say, what about this? And start asking questions. And so there was just so much truth in what that data represented that it really built the case. And the other thing that built the case was global collaboration, just being able to share these ideas as a globally distributed work team.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, how did that translate into like business objectives as far as like the way you were doing it before VR and then the way you now do it? I mean, are you saving money, saving time, better decisions, better products? I mean,
so we're definitely saving a lot of time. I know we're saving money in the things that we catch in the immersive space that we wouldn't have caught. It also allows us to get this holistic view, and we didn't really have a way. So our process has changed, and we have this holistic view of a vehicle in the proper environment with the right materials, with the right look, with the manufacturing process embedded in it. There's so much information. So like the time savings is huge, because in a 30-minute review, we can evaluate what a vehicle would look like off the line and what a customer would see, and cut sections and add in all this rich information and change time of day and like visit that vehicle at, you know, June 21st at 10 a.m. in Dearborn and somewhere else in Australia and get all these time change lighting models in 30 minutes. There's no other way.
I'm saying, Saphir.
So in our industry, it's very much a case still to be made. The difference between, I would gather, our industry and the automotive or aerospace industry is that during the product development process, the digital data that is typically required to create and leverage immersive technologies is not part of the process, is not part of the manufacturing process. You do not need any CAD data to build a shoe. You don't, for the most part. Same with apparel. So for us, we're in the middle of an effort to really justify and rationalize what digital product creation but also immersive technologies bring to the process. Ultimately, the way we're positioning it is by saying that we want to be able to create better product and better experiences more efficiently and closer to the market. So as we define these goals, it's very easy for us to say, to identify the role of digital in that process and the affordances that it brings to you. So that starts with creating those assets. It starts with creating the environments, the virtual environments that we will then leverage. For instance, in our retail stores, in the process of designing our retail stores, our event spaces and things like that. Being able to use immersive technologies is obviously a great way to do things a lot more efficiently. But when it comes to specifically the product creation process, I think it's a bit of a culture change that's needed to be able to convince designers, developers that creating a product virtually and selling it virtually without even having the object to refer to touch, and feel and smell even. That's a challenge that we're still facing internally. We're at a point where we're creating proof of concepts and we're socializing them internally, and there's some good traction there. I think the case for a virtual product creation process is rational, and we will be able to push it through. The challenge is that it's not a change that's going to happen overnight. It's not a change that's going to happen overnight because it's not embedded in the process of bringing product to market. When it comes to experiences, we have a little bit more leverage there. Looking at the portfolio of brands that we have in the VF organization, we have brands like the North Face, Timberland, Vans obviously being one of them. There are a lot of experience-based and activity-based product that we put out there. So it's a little bit easier to draw the parallel between the product and an experience that we want to connect with. And so we're looking at what that means for a consumer, what that means in the context of a retail space or an experience space, but it's very much a work in progress.
What's driving kind of like the imperative in order to be able to move forward with some of these immersive technologies? Is it a push from within the organization, or do you feel like it's a pull from external forces, like are competitors employing these things and being successful and you're playing catch up, or is it more of a let's try it, experiment type of thing and we'll see?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the main thing is the changing expectations from our consumer. Our consumers, especially when you look at a brand like Vans, is digital native, right? So they're used to interacting with video games. They're always on their phones. A lot of their activity happens and is based on interaction with a device or interaction with the virtual environment. So when we think about what that means for our products, for the way we communicate and we tell our story, it's important for us to really speak their language. So that's a bit of a pull from the outside. Obviously, the competition is driving that too, but we're all in that industry. We're all very aware of the need to for that transformation to happen. And there's also an internal groundswell and movement that's happening internally to embrace these new technologies.
Thanks, Drew.
So a lot of what we do is very similar to what Elizabeth and their team at Ford does. Being able to visualize the data is key in a lot of ways. One of the things that virtual reality, so we have a cave and HMDs, which we were talking before. When we say virtual reality, it covers up that whole gamut. With the cave, we have the ability to show customers aircraft that they can't get to otherwise. We can show different configurations and layouts, and for them to be able to see exactly what they're going to be getting, whether we use the cave or the HMD, it draws them into that to where they can then see it, they can become attached to it, they can get a sense of understanding of exactly what they're going to be getting. So on the marketing side, we're able to use it to help show customers that something that's not as often, that it takes a little bit of effort and jockeying to get somebody into an aircraft because of limited resources. When we go into inside the company, we're able to visualize information and data in a design world, engineering world that, like she was talking with spreadsheets. So if we're running acoustics or like CFD, so aerodynamic data and things like that on an airplane, we can show charts and graphs, but if you're trying to sell it up to leadership who might not necessarily understand all of the science behind it, being able to visualize that in an immersive environment helps show what the charts are saying. So it gives you the ability to show things that are typically difficult to understand in a lot of ways, but by being able to help the decision makers make the decisions without it reduces the rework time, helps improve the design. You can also get into designs with other engineers and things like that, and you're able to see how parts fit one-to-one, how things go together. And so that's another way of measuring it is the less rework that has to be done down the line once we start producing parts, the better off the product should be in the end, and the less amount of time and money you have to spend there.
I mean, the argument's always been like, I mean, using digital totally
Mm-hmm.
makes sense for that, right?
Right.
To be able to see it in 3D, make changes, makes total sense. But why like VR or caves?
Right.
Why is it any better than what you were doing before?
Because whenever, and it was kind of interesting, when I first started getting into the VR with the cave and the HMDs, as from an engineering background, you kind of learn to understand to see data in 2D on a screen, even though it's 3D, just the way you look at things. But whenever you start showing it to other people outside of the engineering organization or in management positions, things like that, being able to fully immerse yourself around it, to be able to see it, what it actually looks like more than just a PowerPoint screen, it really gives you a better sense of understanding of getting in there and looking at it. I know the video they showed yesterday, like with the brain surgery and things like that, you can show it with paper, but actually getting in and looking at, walking around it, interacting with it, it provides you that much more confidence in what you're doing and in the decisions that you have to make, that it just adds an extra element and an extra tool there to really for the confidence factor of when you make that decision, that once it comes down the line and rolls out, that is what you wanted it to be.
And because you just recently rolled out like kind of a end consumer configurator in order to be able to help sell and customize some of your private jets.
Yes.
And maybe you can describe it a little bit to me, and it's like, what are the results are you seeing out of there? Are you now like, doubling, tripling, quadrupling your sales?
So we're in that aspect, we're still in the POC phase. So we've done it for a couple of years using our cave. We have customers come into Savannah in our headquarters. They go through the cave that we have, and they're able to switch up configurations in the aircraft. They can see, we can give them some selections of exactly what their interior would look like at times. It produces a greater customer satisfaction. So where we're starting with HMDs is actually going to a customer. So that way, what they see in the headset, whether it's at the start of the design process, which gives them the ability to if they're not sure exactly which way they want to go, they can kind of get an idea of, oh, I like this seating arrangement versus this and whatnot. Or if they're getting closer to the end of the actual, where they have to sign off on the process, they can actually get a better understanding of, this is pretty much exactly what I want, or no, I want to change this color or something like that. So it produces a greater customer satisfaction. So when they actually get the aircraft, they're happier with the product, and they're willing to come back for another product.
I think you had a video?
We do have a video. So I know one of the questions was measuring success, but we can show this. This was actually at our biggest trade show of the year is called MBAA Base, the National Business Aviation Conference and Exposition. This was in Las Vegas this year in October. And so when we started this year, we actually, we had very minimal stuff in the headsets. And so we were able to get tied in with our marketing team, and we've really started in the marketing world, but it's helping us build confidence in the product. If the customer uses it, then why won't people internally in the company use it? And so if we'll show the video, and
could you guys play this?
Welcome to the 2017 NBAA Gulfstream Experience. We have so much exciting stuff for you here today. I'm Janine Haas, Chief Marketing Officer. Come along and I'll show you what we've got this year. Here with me is Courtney Lombardo, our Manager of Design.
Yeah, so this year we have a really exciting experience. It's an 8 by 46-foot LED screen where our guests can walk through their cabin, either a 500, a 600, or a 650 in life-size form.
And here's our paint configurator.
Yeah, so Joel here is one of our visualization designers, and he can take you through all sorts of different designs for the exterior of your aircraft and change out colors and stripe patterns, all with just a click of a button.
Very cool. This is a truly immersive experience.
Yeah, so you can come and don a virtual reality headset and really just see what it feels like to sit in and experience one of our G500 cabins.
And last, but certainly not least, We brought our cave experience from Savannah here on the road. You can collaborate real time with one of our designers and go through a variety of floor plans and materials and really create your own experience. It's really awesome. We hope you can enjoy it. Have a good day.
So that was, not all of it was immersive, as you can see by our floor and the paint scheme app. But when you're spending $50, $60, $70 million on a product, what you get, you want it to be perfect in every way. So it just adds to the ability to make those decisions in confidence in a lot of ways.
So kind of a follow-on question, I'm going to open it up to the whole panel. When you're talking about configuring and you're talking about using it for internal design review, the visuals are pretty important as far as like, okay, it should reflect what it looks like in the real world. Are we there yet in the sense of like it absolutely looks exactly like the physical and no one can tell the difference? And if not, what do you need, or how have you actually trained your organizations to say like virtual is actually good enough to make these decisions?
I'll start.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
So in the experience, if I may open up your question a little more to the whole experience.
Yep.
So visuals, I think at Ford we're doing pretty well. That 4K real-time ray tracing of an immersed perspective is pretty awesome.
When you say ray tracing, I mean, that's usually not that's usually not real time.
Right.
But you're able to do it real time?
Real time in 4K.
What kind of tools are you using?
So we use Autodesk VRAR to do that. And what we do is we create the model, we put measured materials. So we actually have like physical swatches that are measured. And then we materialize the data appropriately. And then in VRAR, we can do real-time ray tracing. And the reflections and the, how much light is absorbed or reflected, we can show. And the way we run, so one of the things we still need is compute power. And it's actually CPU-based, not GPU-based. And the compute power allows us to do 4K ray tracing, but not global illumination. And so when we run a full solve and do like full GI on the model, we have to pause our tracking, and it takes like 30 seconds to solve. But 30 seconds is really not that much time when you consider the old days of sending something to a render farm to understand how light and shadow are playing in the environment. By the time people get their ducks in a row, what ends up happening is somebody's immersed, they stop tracking, they take off the headset, everybody walks up to the 4K power wall, and they just analyze what they're seeing. So visually, I think we're really close, but we really need compute power. But I think one of the things that's missing from the experience still is the natural navigation and interaction that we would have in the physical world that we don't have in the immersive space. So like one example is just the way people like move their heads around and dart their eyes. Those view frustrums are always straight ahead, and if somebody's darting their eyes off axis, those are the miscues that cause us to not want to stay in the immersive environment for a really long period of time. And so I think there's work that needs to be done to make the immersive environment work like biologically our bodies reason and understand that data. And then the other thing is like tactile. We've actually done a lot of work on virtual physical using passive haptics, 3D printed knobs and switches that you can like work with physically in the environment, but see virtually really beautiful. But I think there's still work that can be done in that environment to make us not cyborgs when we enter the immersive environment.
Okay, Saphir?
So I'd like to unpack your question a little bit too, if I may. First, obviously, it's a different industry. The product is very different. And the quality, the final quality of the virtual experience and the interaction with the virtual product is a factor of several different components in the workflow. The major and probably one of the most important components is materials. Materials, getting the right pipeline that allows you to digitize the materials that you end up using will affect how the materials drape on, for garments specifically, how they will perform when, during dynamic movement. This is something we're looking at too. So, starting with materials, the right material language is really important. The next step is what tool you use to create this digital asset. So whether you're looking at footwear, you're looking at apparel, you have pretty much a spectrum of solutions and programs that allow you to create these virtual assets, build them, animate them, materialize them, and visualize them. I would say we're really close. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done in making sure some of the more challenging materials like leather, nubuck, suedes, this is some of the work we're doing with the Timberland brand, look exactly like the final product, because a lot of the purchase decisions are based on those factors specifically. For apparel, going back to how the materials drape, depending on which solution and which tools you use to create these digital assets, your final virtual model might look slightly different, and ultimately you'll judge the quality of that virtual asset against the physical counterpart, the physical twin, the digital twin. So I would say we might be about 80% there. There's still a lot of work to be done in making sure the way we build these assets, but also the way we show these assets is consistent with the physical experience. Elizabeth was mentioning the tactile component of that experience. That's a huge component of the purchase decision. Our products are not hard goods. And so combining physical, so it's going to come down to finding the right balance between physical assets and digital assets. Looking at having swatches to look at and to touch is gonna help bridge that gap between the virtual product that you're showing and the physical counterpart. How you present your garments, whether it's a puffy jacket, you want to, it's not like a static car, for instance, that doesn't change. It changes shape as you move. It changes shape as you interact with it. So being able to communicate that in a way that engages the consumer is really important. So there's a lot more work to be done in how we present these assets, these digital assets that we've created, so that the buyers, but also the consumers feel comfortable making decisions based on.
And they think it's believable, probably too.
Yeah.
Because if you grab that jacket and it's not conforming like you think, and then they're not going to believe what they're seeing.
Yeah. And then you go into considerations of fit and looking at virtual fit and allowing the consumer to really interact with the product, whether it's virtual shoes or virtual garments, be able to wear it and see how they look in that.
I mean, it's one of the, hopefully a key takeaway for the audience is that when you think about VR, AR, MR in the enterprise space, it's not about the headset. It's not about the technology. It's about solving a particular problem. I mean, they're trying to make decisions about a design, or they're trying to actually sell a product. You have to be thinking about the entire experience, and just think about the fact that VR is just a component of that, or AR is just a component of that. It's not a first principle. You have to solve the problem first.
I think from the visualization standpoint, it depends on what part of the process we're talking about. If it's in the conceptual side, on the engineering side, I think the what you see in the virtual space or augmented space is good enough for what we need there, especially if you're looking at it from the internals of the for the aircraft. being able to see the structure and the electrical lines and things like that, it does the job because we're used to seeing it in a gray format on the screen or something like that. If we're looking at the exterior, it's getting closer. We do reviews and we're able to get some the feel of what the aircraft will look like on the ramp, like Elizabeth was talking about, with the sun and the lighting and everything like that. When we're doing the experiences like we showed in the video, I don't think we're quite there yet. I think there's a number of limiting factors. One is the time it takes to take the data we have and make it look photoreal. There's a lot of manipulation that goes on, a lot of hand work that has to be put in behind it to make it look like that. And then even if we can get it extremely close to photoreal in a real-time engine, if we do put them in an immersive experience in the headset or the cave or whatever it may be, the resolution, you lose everything in that. So you're not able to actually, if we're talking about the stitching in a seat, you can't see what's going on there. If we're talking materials, how it looks, and then you lose it at that point too. So what we like to do is blend the two worlds of giving them the immersive experience, but then showing them the actual physical right alongside it. So that way they see it, broad scope, but then they actually get in and really understand what they're going to be getting when they receive the product. So I think we're getting there. We're not quite there yet, but there's a couple limiting factors in there.
Understood. So before we get too far, I'd like to actually start opening it up to the audience and see if there's any questions. If there's not, I'll keep asking more questions, but I want to make sure there's plenty of time. Do we have a brave soul? Yes. You want to wait for the mic to come now. So introduce yourself, where you're from, and then your question, please.
Hi, my name's Nathan Gaidani. I work for Cityscape Digital in London, and I work in AEC. So we talk a lot about using, I'll say, XR for improving decision making, making less mistakes, maybe saving time and money, but we don't talk that much about designing much better things by using XR. Can you say something on that?
I can.
Go ahead.
So yeah, that's a really great point. And I think one of the other strengths that I really didn't focus it much on, but we really do, is we can make better decisions. We have so much more freedom that I think the solutions that we come up with that are related to how a customer interfaces with our vehicles are much more profound, because we have the freedom of the immersive space to ideate in. And I think it's a newer use at Ford, so it's kind of like the next thing that I've been focusing on, and it's been fantastic. So being able to really have a blank slate of a vehicle, like where would we want things, how are we going to use it, what kind of surprise and delight. And so I don't know if you were here yesterday when I gave my talk, but I had this little clip of the GT race car, and that the part of the development of that was, what is the excitement around this car? How should it function? And what should be the center of how we get the performance out of that vehicle? And the immersive environment and like the emotion that we get in the space was part of how we were developing that vehicle. And so really, the answer to that question for me at Ford is really around the way we can ideate, the way we can understand what the customer really wants, and like the connection, like I want that connection that somebody would have with one of our vehicles.
Yeah, I think to jump off on that point, it's you're talking better designs in the XR space. Is at the conceptual level, I don't have to build a physical mock-up now. I can jump around, I can change the layout, the design, or whatever it may be, and I can do it quickly in one of the real-time engines without having to go back to the drawing board every time and start fresh. As I can quickly manipulate things and then jump into it and see what I want to and get that emotional connection. I know our marketing guys talk a lot about the emotional connection, and just being able to do it just rapidly helps improve the design process and rule out things that you may get 6 months down the road traditionally and building something and realize, let's go back to square one again. So,
fundamentally, I think that the way we design footwear and apparel is very unnatural and almost illogical. You know, we're designing 3D objects, 3D product with a device that may not be tethered to your computer, looking at a 2D screen and trying to imagine what the product, or trying to communicate what the product is going to look like, feel like, etc. I dream of a day where we can actually design our product the way you would build it, you know, the way it was done, you know, in the past, where you could actually, you know, feel the material, see how the material behaves, shape your product, as opposed to creating it and then hoping that it'll look good. So that's kind of a fundamental point of view that I think drives a lot of what how we're trying to leverage, you know, immersive technologies, XR, getting to a point where the designers can interact with their designs better. So that's one way to create better design. Another way to look at better design or better product is by making sure that the product that you're designing is actually the product that your consumer wants, as opposed to, you know, putting something out there and again hoping that they like it, right? So that involves pulling the consumer into the product creation process. You know, last year we relaunched our customization platform. This is a first step into a much longer initiative to better connect with the consumer and loop them into the process of creating the product that they're going to wear. You know, allowing them to co-design the product in a way that's intuitive, that's interactive, is ultimately going to ensure that, you know, the product that comes out of it is exactly what they want. And then the last point that I wanted to make is being able to create product that also behaves like it's meant, like it's designed for the consumer. We talk about data-driven design. We talk about parametric design, where the way the product, you know, I'm talking about footwear, but even apparel, the product is built to fit you, to provide performance where you need it, based on your anatomy, based on your activity, and being able to communicate that in a way that's realistic, that it's engaging, is something that's hugely beneficial.
Question. Here in the front, please wait for the mic.
Hi, Dan Cotting, Director of Immersive Media at Shaco. Thinking about this concept of bringing this technology in as a means to solve problems, to what extent, both from a strategic standpoint and an executional standpoint, are you relying entirely on internal teams? Are you reaching out to external vendors and providers to help you navigate those solutions? And then the second part of the question would be, whatever that mix is, why are you as an organization going forward in that way?
I mean, it also goes to the question of like just a talent pool. I mean, are there enough people out there to do this kind of stuff today?
For Gulfstream, everything that you've seen there was done internally. We do go out to get the software and the hardware that we need, but we actually have a large spectrum in the company. We have some graphic designers that work in our completions world. One area that we do lack is in the engine, the real-time engine world. All of us come from, or most of us come from engineering or graphic design, so we understand Meyer, Max, or CATIA, or Siemens, or whatever it may be. But when it comes into the gaming world, we know how to play the games, but actually getting in and building them, that's where we sometimes hit the restrictions. So it's just learning as we go has been the way we've been doing it.
Have you been like, I mean, is the goal to try to keep it in-house? Or
Preferably.
do you want to?
It depends on the application. It really depends on what we're trying to build, what we're trying to get out. Of course, price, timelines, things like that. I think so far we've kept it in-house in a lot of ways just because we're still proving to leadership and management that it is very useful and viable. I think we're getting to the point where they think it is, given that they allowed us to do the trade show. But I think going forward, I think it really just comes down to what is the application, what is the use case, what will it be like if we're sustaining it, going long-term with a product. So doing a POC is one thing, but then how do we manage it once it gets out of the POC phase, and how do we keep up with it? So that could be coming in with third parties who help maintain that and things like that. So not against it, just we haven't been there yet.
Okay, Saphir.
I think for us, it's still a very uncharted territory. For the most part, I believe that the tools we really need haven't been built yet, and we're close, but there's a lot that needs to be done in connecting the different components and the different tools that support a virtual product creation process. And then, on the visualization side, one of the challenges that we have is that this is something that is still pretty new to the audience, to our consumers, in the context of the product that we're selling and we're creating. So the success of this transformation will be based on the strength of the strategic partnerships. Finding partners. We don't claim to have all the information we need. We certainly don't have all the people, enough talent, and enough people to do that internally. So a lot of it is going to come down through partnerships with technology partners, but also players in adjacent industries, like the automotive industry, and a lot of learnings and a lot of best practices will be developed by exchanging information and experience and failures.
Elizabeth?
So we've worked to really use the best tool for the job and take the best that we can find out in the industry and provide some stability and consistency for the people who use immersion as part of their business process. And so we layer the way we work, and that's something that's our secret sauce, and that's something we do inside Ford Motor Company. And so we have tools, we call it the 5 toolbox, that work the way, and they work the way we work. And then everything underneath that we could replace at any time with anything. And so that layer, that secret sauce, allows us to get in the immersive environment and do the things that we do in our product development when we have sign-off reviews, or we're at milestones, or we're having a craftsmanship review. Whatever those things are, the way we work is available, and we don't have to dig deep into the software and make a bunch of picks. So that is part of the way, what we develop, and then everything else underneath, we could come and go just depending on what new technology is out there. So we could get a new headset at any time and plug it in and use that. We could use new software that would require a little more work, because we'd have to figure out how to bring that data in with our pipeline. Because pipeline, we haven't really talked about that, but that's a key thing to, I think, the successful implementation of immersive in a large company. But basically, whatever's out there, we can take advantage of it somehow if we need to.
Just a perspective from a service organization, what we're seeing is that for design review, things that are part of the core design process, they usually want to staff up and have the skill sets in-house because it's so key. But we find that the further downstream you get in the process, marketing and sales, that becomes an opportunity for external parties to be able to come in and help, because those organizations typically don't want to hire up a battery of people in order to do things, and it's project by project.
Right,
Seems
and-
to be,
yep.
That seems to be how things are going. And the other thing that we're seeing is that it's like everyone is, from an enterprise point of view, is they're almost like giving people a job title that says either it's either virtualization, digitization, it's VR, AR strategy, it's that kind of a title. And it's their responsibility to go and figure out how do we actually take all this 3D content we have and we leverage these new platforms in order to be able to do something with it. And so, if you can kind of come in and you can help them determine like what their problems are that they need help with, and then come up with a solution, you're better off. Just touching back onto the pipeline, because I think it's really important. It's like we see this time and time again. It's like going from like the CAD world, which is like NURBS-based and really, really detailed, to a virtual world. Sorry, let's talk about like VR headsets and also AR devices. I mean, that's like a real-time engine, maybe a Unity or an Unreal. These are usually completely different contexts. How do you successfully navigate from one to the other? Maybe you can kind of talk about, it's super easy, or maybe it's really hard, and how you overcame it.
It's super easy once you work out all the details.
So what are those details so that you can tell your secret sauce to the rest of the audience?
Well, so first of all, I'd like to say that I think going from CAD to a gamer headset doesn't necessarily mean you use a game engine.
Okay.
So you can do that with a lot of enterprise solutions. So you can do it with CATIA, you can do it with Teamcenter Viz Mockup, you can do it with Autodesk VRAR, we can do it with Maya. I mean, there's lots of ways that you can use a gamer headset and get immersed in your data.
Okay.
So in general, as a broad brush approach, the closer you stay with the way the native source of your data, the easier it is going to be to get immersed in it like really quickly. And the farther you deviate from that, and the more you have to translate or optimize, the harder it's going to be. And so what we've done at Ford is really with nothing to do with VR, before VR was a thing, Ford was working on developing a whole vehicle that we could get at like digitally. And we had that foundation that I could take advantage of. And so having that foundation where you can say, I need this, powertrain and this engine and this body and this thing, and put it together and make a car, was there for me to consume. So that really helped. And then we could, at those different points and milestones, kind of grab that data and visualize it. But when we first tried to do that, and we had to like remove ourselves multiple times, like translate to this, add that, and then we couldn't get materials, the data looked horrible. So when you're flipping normals to get data into a game engine, it's just not valuable anymore. So we need that pipeline to take the native data and get in it.
Does it typically mean, it's a lot of data. We're talking
Yep.
like millions and millions of polygons.
Tens of millions.
Tens of millions
Yeah.
of polygons.
Billions.
What are you throwing at it? Are you like, what kind of hardware are you throwing at this thing? A single workstation?
Yeah, single
Any
workstation,
workstations?
single high-end engineering workstation
One GPU, two GPUs?
with one GPU.
Expensive
One,
GPU?
yeah,
And when you come into the game engine world, the real-time viz engine world, even if you have multiple GPUs, they only work on a single card
That's
anyway.
right.
So you could have 6 of them lined up, but only one of them is going to be doing the work because of the SLIing.
so there's a want.
Yes, yeah, I know they're working on it, and hopefully sooner than later.
Yep.
But yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, for us, we're obviously still building that pipeline out, trying to really piece things together so that it makes sense. For whether you're looking at apparel or footwear is a lot harder to crack just because of the intricacies of how the product is built. But ultimately, I think leveraging what's being done I think the gaming industry is pushing a lot of the progress there. We realize that some of the tools that apparel designers use actually started in the gaming industry, were being used in the gaming industry. For instance, Marvelous Designer, which is a modeling tool, an asset creation tool that's used by gaming designers and character designers, character modelers, is something that is used quite a bit in the apparel industry. So being able to leverage what's existing and ultimately connect the dots is something that we're very much in the middle of.
Yeah, and from our perspective, I think, like Elizabeth said, if we're staying in the engineering world or going through like the cave, we have a very defined process. It's very straightforward if we're doing VRAR, IRA rendering, any of those to produce some sort of immersive experience. But jumping into the HMDs or the mobile platforms or the wearables, whatever they may be, that one has become much trickier, much more time consuming. And you're talking thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of polys. We go into the billions of polys when we go into the aircraft. And then so doing a POC is one thing. It could take a month or so to do a few parts or whatever it may be. But then once we do it one time, it's maintaining it long term. So as engineering is updating their parts, if I want to use the latest part, I want to be able to automatically update that model in the engine, in the headset. So just maintaining it, updating it, keeping it at a poly level there, or a level that's reasonable for whether it's a headset attached to a workstation or a mobile device or whatever it may be.
So it's sort of like an automated pipeline to optimize each of those assets, but always maintaining a connection to the true source.
Yes. Yeah. Maintaining that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Another question, yes. Mike, please.
Morgan Gerard from ACOM, Director of Systems Innovation. I kind of have two questions. One's sort of a follow-up. And I'll ask this one first, but I mean you guys to answer it second. Do you use LODs at all levels of detail? And the first question is really, are you planning on using functional experiences where you're tied into XPlane and you can actually get an idea of what that plane's doing in the air? Or are you on a driving track, or can you get into a sim where you're wearing those pieces of clothing and do a twirl and have some sort of experience of that piece or that technology working while you're in it?
So I'll start with, I can start with the XPlane, jumping into that world. We actually have created a HMD experience using a third-party flight simulator, being able to take off and fly and get an experience. And it's a really great experience. So we are exploring that space and getting into it deeper, and really seeing how it can affect the pilots and pilot training and things like that.
For us, being able to simulate, we're talking about simulation, simulate how the garment not only looks but behaves when you wear it is the holy grail, right? It needs to look realistic. It needs to be dynamically realistic. The only thing that we see being still a challenge and a hurdle is the lack of tactile interaction. And that's, once we crack that, I think we'll be in a good space, but we're far from that.
Elizabeth.
So the LOD question, we just use top level, so we don't really use LODs at all. So yeah, whatever the finest level we can get, that's what we use. And so the second question is, we are doing a lot with experience-based design, and we're putting our designers, especially engineers, user experience people, in environments. So we'll go out to, like an example is, we'll go out to a campsite, like a recreation area with a spherical camera, and take some imagery of what that's like, and then put a truck in that environment and then, have somebody loading their gear and, doing some stuff in the most natural way possible, not like with, and trying to get at what it's like for you to be, Joe F-150 driver. And, what do you want out of this experience? Or what if you're a contractor? And so, yeah, there's a lot of scenario-based development going on using immersive tech. And it is perfect for that. It's really great. It's working out really well. And that's another thing, that there really wasn't a good way of doing that besides taking a prototype and going to a campsite or to try to get the actual feeling. So what we'd end up doing is doing that in, a building at Ford in a design space where you're not really getting the feeling that you're camping. But now we need campfire smell. But
I think we have time for one more question.
Guy in the back.
Way in the back in the middle there. Well, he's not. Yeah, you.
Hello, my name is Tom Turner. I'm with ExxonMobil, and I'm one of those AR/VR strategists that you were talking about, and just freaking out about scaling, right? What am I going to do, right? Because I've got my business customers from all over the world saying, we want this because we did such a good job in internal marketing, and now I'm like, okay, now what, right? So we're working on the pipeline. All these questions are fantastic. I'd love to hear what are some of the things that you guys are thinking about, and even what did you do at Ford in the early days to really begin to scale up?
Mm-hmm. So there are many answers to that question. That's a pretty broad. So in general, because I was kind of like a really early adopter of the tech, I had this solution that really, like now there's a lot of attention to VR, but when I was proposing these solutions to Ford, they're like, you want me to do what? You want me to put that what on my head and put that what? They didn't want to do it. So basically the key for me to global adoption of the technology had to do with providing real tangible value that an executive could see. So when I had our vice president of engineering come and get immersed and solve problems with Australia in a real-time review, that was really the moment. But the foundation that was laid prior to that was a years-long process to understand how we get data, where it comes from, and then like looking at it continually holistically. So the solution that we had to provide had to be like the whole car, which is with as much content as we could get at the time. So really, I think the key to the adoption part was really about getting a senior leader to really care about it. And the leading up to that was really about developing, like chipping away one thing at a time and providing a value. Like I would go out, somebody asked me, how did you get this, do you think you could have developed your technology if you were in the IT building somewhere else? And I said, no, I needed to be where the users were. And I'd hit the pavement and I'd be like, hey, I'm Elizabeth and I have this crazy immersive thing and I want to do this thing for you and I can add this value and I think I can help you. And that's really like I did that one use case at a time with different departments in Ford and kind of like spread the knowledge that way. And they might not have come back, but they learned that they could do something with it. And then once we had a good enough foundation, then it took off. So yeah, I think it's just chipping away at it, unfortunately.
And I think one thing is if you've got people that are excited about it is managing expectations. Being able to let people to know, hey, a POC, couple weeks, months, cool, but if we're wanting to do this broad spectrum, going up scale, it's going to take a while because we have to, your infrastructure has to build around it, your tool sets, the pipeline, and you really have to manage the expectation of the customers that it's not a quick turn. As a whole community here, we're all trying to solve that problem to scale up.
So that is exactly what I did, and that is exactly what I'm doing. And so I'm at that point, right? I've got the buy-in, I've got everyone's ready to roll. We've prototyped and we've got everybody fired up, and now we're about to kick off a big project to really dig in and figure out how we're going to scale this out. And that's where, developing the pipeline, getting all our assets sorted through, like all the different components, and that's kind of the piece we're kind of at the beginning of right now.
Right. And that really requires structure and organization. Like, you need people. And when we got to that point, I think it's really cool because, like, doing this VR stuff, there are probably 50 or 60 people around the world at Ford that are employed doing this stuff. And so it is, not only is it a platform of tech, it's a platform of people. And they all need to talk and share. And so, my suggestion would be figure out what that is, like how many reviews you're going to do, how long it takes to prepare them, and make a case for that team that you're going to need. Because we have a small team of people in each location around the world that are creating immersive environments and adding in the functionality and putting together, all the things that are needed. And if we didn't have that, we would not be successful, because we're doing like 600 reviews just in one lab, and then we have global.
So, afraid we're getting the hook, and so I do want to take this time to. Last thing is, in regards from a service provider point of view in the audience, is that I still think the enterprise space, in regards to VR, AR, is like a great place to be in. There's like some really hard problems that need to get solved. If you look at it from a perspective is that people represented on this panel and then also out there have lots of challenges that need to be resolved. It's not necessarily just a VR thing or an AR thing. It's a total solution. I'd like to take this time to really thank our audience, our panel.
Thank you.
And I do think that they're going to be around for the rest of the day, so please go find them, ask them questions. That's what we're here for. Thank you.